Hello, this is Charlie and Larry at Azelda's Legacy, and we keep threatening to do a short one of these chapter and a cup videos.
So
and this might...
We'll see you later.
That would be short. Anyway, this might actually be the day that we do it because both of us are pretty wiped out. We did not get one posted last night. Went to see some awesome Christmas lights with some very dear friends. If you're ever in the Red Oak area, Red Oak, Iowa area around Christmas time, you definitely want to go out to see the Bayard Christmas tree lights out southwest. Excuse me, my bad, erase that. Northwest of Red Oak. They're out on Avenue E, I think. Anyway,
way out there.
You Google Bayard Christmas lights, or even just Christmas lights near Red Oak, and you will get directions to it. It is awesome. They've been doing this for over 50 years. It's a family deal, and it's awesome. And they have their priorities in the right place. They do all the fun stuff, but they are, very focused on. There's a church there. There's a 100-foot cross laid out on the hillside, and some other crosses.
Reason for the season.
Mangers, yes, the reason for the season. They're very focused on the reason for the season. Couldn't get my words straight. Like I said, we've had some busy days, and so we're a little on the swamp side. So we're still in Luke 2, and gonna still be in Luke 2 tomorrow because we're not moving very fast. When we were in this last, we talked about it being I think we actually got there, didn't we? 8 days. The 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child. He's nodding very slightly. It's hard to see on the video, I'm sure. And he was named Jesus because the angel said so. Had told him so ahead of time.
We had read that. I don't know
so,
how far we went.
I think maybe we read a little bit further, but we didn't talk about it any at all. So this is a chapter and a cup. So we are in chapter 2 of Luke, and we haven't had a cup for several days of this. We've had our bottles of water because we haven't been doing these first thing in the morning, so it hasn't been our morning coffee.
First thing in the evening.
Yeah, this is first thing in the evening, or last thing in the evening. Just, Anyway, so we're in Luke 2, ready for verse 22. Did you want to read that, or did you want me to?
How far are we going?
Give me 22 through 24, and then we'll see if we're going to do anything else.
When the days of her purification according to the law of Moses were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that openeth the womb shall be called holy to the Lord, and to offer the sacrifice according to that which is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons.
So, every now and then I run across this idea that, Jesus was always poor, that he was poor all of his life, or conversely, you have the health, wealth, and prosperity gospel. Well, we don't really, we can't really say that he was poor all of his life, but at this point, having come from Nazareth, and Joseph may have not had much work in the few months before, just because of the stigma of them being pregnant out of wedlock, which in a small town everybody's going to recognize that, and in that culture that wasn't going to be tolerated. So he may have not had much work, and how much work there was up around Nazareth at the time that he was born, we really don't know. they'd traveled down to Bethlehem. They weren't settled yet. And so we see them going up for her purification. Well, when you go back and you look in Leviticus 12, verses 2 through 4 talk about the purification, and verses 6 through 8 talk about what that offering was to be brought, and we'll talk a little bit more about the purification in a minute, but when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering. So if you were of average means, or fairly wealthy, or anything other than just dirt poor, you were going to bring that lamb. So you would bring a lamb and a pigeon or a turtle dove to be offered before the Lord to make atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the issue of her blood. In other words, the afterbirth and so on made her unclean. And so this would be a sign that she was cleansed from that. This is the law for her that hath borne a male or a female. And if she be not able to bring a lamb, in other words, if she couldn't afford to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, the one for the burnt offering and the other for a sin offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be clean. So, at this particular point in their life, we see that they did not have the means to actually bring what would be considered the proper sacrifice, so they were allowed to bring the alternate sacrifice. Now, later on, with the gifts that the Magi brought to them, and maybe Jesus was as much as 2 years old by then, but with the gifts that the Magi brought them, they had the finances to make the trip to Egypt and get settled in down there. So at that point, radical difference in finances from at this point.
Able to get a U-Haul.
Sure, because the local U-Haul dealer was just down the street. We're well familiar with U-Haul, but those are stories for a different day. Now this thing about purification, and I don't know, you may have some thoughts to add here out of your church background. I don't know how much they dealt with that, but there were a lot of things in the Old Testament law. There were a lot of things that could make you ritually unclean, or ceremonially unclean might be another way to word it. A lot of these we see as just a religious thing, but just like the dietary laws, a lot of them actually had to do with making sure that God's people stayed healthy. When he goes so far as to give the people instructions on how to deal with mold, you have a piece of fabric that got moldy, or you have a piece of leather that got moldy. When God goes so far as to deal with things like that, you know what? He is concerned with taking care of his people. The circumcision, like we mentioned a few days ago, has health benefits as well as just being a sign that the Jewish people were his people. Well, this business about purification, there are genetic differences, and I don't know all the details of it, but there's genetic chemical differences when you give birth to a daughter versus when you give birth to a son. I know that there can be differences if your child is a certain blood type. For instance, as an O positive mother, my daughter was A negative, and she jaundiced just right off the bat. Now, she didn't jaundice real badly, but the doctor told me, well, that's typical for an O positive mother with an A negative baby. And just like that, there's also differences in how the chemistry interacts between a woman giving birth to a male and a woman giving birth to a female. There's details there that nobody had any clue about clear back then, but God knew because he created us. So it says that, let's see, in verse, okay, this is Leviticus 4. Let me go back over here. Leviticus 12, verses 2 through 4. We are tired. So, verse 2, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a woman have conceived seed and born a man-child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, according to the days of the separation for her infirmity she shall be unclean. So that would be like the week after a person's period. A woman would be unclean for that next week. So here she's had this baby, she's unclean for the next week. And in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. So it's just kind of given a timeline here. She has the baby. For the next week, she's unclean. On the 8th day, he's circumcised. And she shall then continue in the blood of her purification, of her purifying, 3 days. So 3 days plus 7 days would be 40 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. But if she bear a maid child, or a girl child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation, and she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 66 days. So, putting that into modern English, 14 days plus 66 days is going to be 80 days. So twice as long for a girl child as for a boy child. So this was 40 days after Jesus was born that they are going up to the temple. And I think I mentioned when we were talking about circumcision, there can be some confusion here because it's stuff that we're not familiar with, doing the timing of it and having the meanings behind it and all that. I heard a really well-known preacher that we have a lot of respect for, and like I said, I think he just misspoke because he was talking about these events that took place at the temple at 40 days. He was talking about that as being when they went to have the child circumcised. So there's a distinct difference there. When he was when they circumcised, they would go ahead and name. When they would go to the temple for the purifying, that's when there were sacrifices given and all that. And that's when we see them coming to the temple. And I don't know if we're going to go ahead and read any further, but if you're familiar with the story of Simeon and Anna, they weren't a couple, they were just two separate people, but both involved in the temple there. This is where we're going to start seeing them encountering Joseph and Mary and the baby Jesus. And we'll be back into the prophetic stuff. That stuff that hadn't been heard for 400 years. Now, I have rattled on really quick because I had all that in my head. Did you have anything that you wanted to say about purification or any of the stuff out of the former church background?
Nothing come to mind.
Strong silent type, tired tonight. But he has been working on the house over there.
No, here's the other one. Well,
Yeah.
This is not a fish. This is
this is
This is
long days. Mm-hmm. So
there'll probably be a video that I'll do. I won't do a video while I'm working because I just haven't gotten past getting everything set up and videoing as I'm doing, and I just want to get it done. And if I do all that other than it takes longer, and it's already taken longer than I want it to take. So,
and we did say that we're technologically challenged as well as not being major theologians or.
I know how to turn the camera on. I don't know how to do anything else. I haven't yet figured out how to turn it off. Wait a minute. Turn it off like Ryan.
Sure.
So anyhow.
So this is our chapter and a cap for tonight. We're here at Azelda's Legacy, where truth comes home. Charlie coined that phrase, and
You, remember to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment if you have one, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
good night.
Good night.